Most people think starting a cemetery costs the same as starting a landscaping business. It doesn't. The real minimum investment for even a small cemetery is closer to $300,000, and in most cases it's well over $500,000. If you came here thinking this is a cheap side hustle, I need to correct that right now, because the data does not support that idea at all. But here's the twist. Cemeteries are also one of the few businesses that can generate revenue for decades, sometimes over a century, from the same piece of land. So the question isn't, is this cheap? The question is this worth it, and for who? Let's break it down properly. This business is for people who have access to serious capital, patience for a slow return asset, and comfort working inside heavy regulation. It's for investors thinking in 10, 20, 30-year timelines, not people looking for fast monthly cash flow. If you need income in the next 6 months, this is not your business. If you're looking to build a long-term, recession-resistant asset that also serves a real community need, keep watching. So what exactly is a cemetery business? At its core, it's land that's legally designated and licensed for human burial, divided into plots, and sold to families either in advance, called pre-need, or at the time of death, called at need. Revenue comes from 4 main places: selling burial plots, opening and closing fees for each burial, sales of mausoleum or columbarium space, and ongoing maintenance or perpetual care fees. Some cemeteries also sell monuments and markers directly. Now let's talk demand, because this part actually surprises people. The U.S. sees around 3.1 million deaths per year, and that number is expected to keep climbing as the population ages. The death rate is projected to rise to about 9.28 deaths per 1,000 people in 2025. That's not a trend that reverses. Death is the one market that never loses customers. U.S. funerals online. At the same time, the industry itself is shifting. Cremation rates have climbed as burial space has become scarcer in dense population centers, and Americans have become more mobile, reducing the appeal of a fixed, permanent burial plot. On top of that, nearly 64% of adults under 40 say they're interested in green burial or environmentally conscious cremation options. So demand is still there, but the shape of demand is changing fast. IBIS World. In dollar terms, the U.S. cemetery services market was valued at around $6.3 billion in 2025, and industry estimates suggest the average profit margin for an established U.S. cemetery sits around 12.8%. That's a healthy, stable margin, but it's a margin on a business that requires enormous upfront investment to even open the gates. IBIS World Wi-Fi Talents. Let's get into the real numbers. This is a minimum estimate for a small, 5 to 10 acre cemetery in a rural or exurban area, not a premium urban location. Category low estimate high estimate land, 5 to 10 acres, zone for cemetery use, $150, $000 $400, $000 licenses, permits, legal, trust setup $25, $000 $60, $000 site development, grading, roads, drainage, fencing, sectioning, $100, $000 $300, $000 perpetual/endowment care trust seed funding $20, $000 $50, $000 office space, equipment, mower, utility vehicle $30, $000 $70, $000 website and cemetery management CRM $3, $000 $8, $000 launch marketing $5, $000 $15, $000 insurance and contingency $10, $000 $25, $000 total minimum investment $343, $000 $928, $000. Yes, that's a wide range, and land price is the reason. Land in the Midwest or rural South can be a fraction of land near a growing suburb. Let's talk about where that money actually goes. The land is obvious, but it's the site development that surprises new operators. You can't just fence off a field. You need engineering studies, drainage plans so graves don't flood, internal roads, surveyed sections and rows, and often a small office or chapel structure. Then there's the perpetual care trust. Most states legally require cemeteries to set aside a percentage of every plot sale, often 10 to 15%, into a trust that funds long-term grounds maintenance, even after the cemetery stops selling new plots. This isn't optional. It's consumer protection law in most states, and skipping it can get your license pulled. Monthly operating costs for a small cemetery typically run between $3,000 and $8,000. That covers groundskeeping labor, mowing and equipment fuel, insurance, utilities, a part-time admin person, and your software subscription. Compared to the upfront cost, monthly overhead is actually manageable. Now, income potential, and I'll give you 3 honest scenarios based on plot sales alone. Conservative, selling around 10 plots a year at an average of $1,500, plus opening and closing fees, puts you around $25,000 a year. Realistic, 25 plots a year brings you closer to $65,000 annually once fees are included. Optimistic, 50 plots a year, which usually requires strong local reputation and marketing, can bring in $150,000 or more. Average industry profit margin, again, sits around 12.8% once the cemetery is established and maintenance costs stabilize. Here's the break-even reality, and I want to be blunt about this. With an investment north of $300,000 and realistic annual profit in the tens of thousands, full break-even on land and development can take 10 to 20 years. This is not a business you start to recover your money fast. It behaves more like long-term real estate than a typical small business. The biggest mistake people make is underestimating the perpetual care trust obligation and assuming they can use all their sales revenue as pure profit. The second biggest mistake is buying land before confirming zoning and state cemetery licensing approval. Land that looks perfect can be legally impossible to convert. Third, people underestimate how emotionally sensitive sales conversations are and hire staff with zero training in grief-aware communication, which damages reputation fast in a small community. Now, the opportunity side. Publicly traded death care companies only control about 15% of the total funeral and cemetery market, which means the vast majority is independent and often outdated. 2 real gaps stand out. First, green and natural burial, which needs less land development and appeals directly to that under 40 demographic we mentioned earlier. Second, digital record keeping. Many smaller cemeteries still run on paper maps and index cards for plot records, which creates real legal and family trust problems. A cemetery that markets itself as modern, transparent, and digitally organized stands out immediately in this space. Wi-Fi talents. If you're serious about starting one, here's the actual order of operations. Step 1. Research your state's specific cemetery licensing board and perpetual care trust requirements, because these vary significantly by state. Step 2. Identify and option land before purchasing, contingent on zoning approval. Step 3. Get your state cemetery license and trust structure approved. Step 4. Hire a civil engineer for site development plans. Step 5. Build your basic office, signage, and digital plot record system. Step 6. Soft launch with pre-need sales to local families and faith communities before your grand opening. On the tool side, because this is genuinely necessary here, you need a plot management and sales CRM. This tracks which plots are sold, reserved, or available, manages family records, handles payment plans for pre-need sales, and keeps you compliant with state record-keeping laws. Trying to run this on spreadsheets works for about the first 20 plots and then becomes a legal liability. This is exactly the kind of system SoftAngles builds and sets up for small operators, including the website where families can browse availability and request information. If you want this handled properly instead of guessing, you can book a free consultation with SoftAngles, and the link is in the description. For marketing, online methods include a clean, respectful website, local search optimization so you show up when someone searches cemetery near me, and building relationships with local funeral homes who refer families directly to you. Offline methods matter even more here, including relationships with local churches, community organizations, and hospice groups. Low-budget strategy is simple. Relationships beat ads in this industry. Scaling strategy, once your first section is near capacity, involves developing additional acreage and adding services like cremation niches or a small columbarium, which need far less land per unit sold. The risks are real. Regulatory violations can shut you down. Local zoning boards can be slow or resistant to new cemetery approvals near residential areas. And this industry has documented cases of operators mismanaging trust funds, which has led to state intervention and forced closures. Reputation and compliance are not optional extras here, they're survival requirements. Do the licensing paperwork before touching land money. Do fund your perpetual care trust properly from day one. Do invest in proper digital record systems early. Don't assume this is a low-capital business. Don't cut corners on drainage and site engineering. Don't handle grieving families with untrained staff. So, final verdict. Is a cemetery business worth starting? If you have access to real capital, a long time horizon, and you're comfortable operating inside heavy regulation, yes, this can become a stable, decades-long asset with strong long-term margins. If you're looking for a low-cost side hustle or fast returns, this is absolutely not it, and I'd point you toward adjacent options instead, like cemetery groundskeeping contracts, monument sales, or cemetery software services, which need a fraction of the capital. If this kind of realistic, numbers-first breakdown is useful to you, subscribe, because we break down the real cost of a new business idea every single week. And if you're at the stage of actually building the digital side of an operation like this, website, CRM, plot management, book that free cons.